Right. Hello. Okay, so here is the discussion video, and I'm just holding the ukulele for fun. I'm not actually playing music. Well, I mean, I was, but I'm not going to for the video. Okay, so discussion on that. See, that sermon is something means a lot to me personally, because it's hard to figure out. It's just more on who God is, more learning who God is. And reverence, that balance between reverence and family is completely mind-blowing. So last term at uni, there was this speaker in Josh's dorm. They were doing like a floor event thing, of floor worship, and the woman who was speaking started off her prayer just calling God Dad. And like, I mean, you hear that a lot, like Jesus calls God Abba, which is like daddy, it's personal. But it didn't really hit me until then. It's weird. And it's especially difficult to consider when you have estrangement from your own father. And so there's like the initial feeling that there's someone who loves me, there's a parent who loves me and cares for me. And then there's, wait, are they like my father? Because my father was difficult. And then there's that section of it, and then there's the other section of it, like, he is holy God, creator of the universe, perfect in nature, and anything wrong against him is worthy of destruction. I don't know a better way of saying that. And because both are true, it's so hard to understand. So I love this, just coming to an idea of God's name as holy, what holiness is. And I think I'll also stick a link to a video that describes it really well. There's this entire channel that I love. They do, well, you'll see amazing descriptions. Okay, and then there's this line here. This commandment speaks very much of how intimate our relationship with God is. Because if you love God, if you are close to Him, you're going to be careful how you use His name. Right, okay, so there's this whole other thing that gives me so much joy and is nothing to do with anything, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Started reading through the Old Testament first, going all the way through it, because I've read the New Testament a few times now, because it's a lot easier to read and understand, because the Old Testament is historical and there's so much cultural stuff that is difficult. But then I love seeing the story unravel. Here we have the I am. God says I am. That is his name, and then Jesus having it, using the same later. It's just, it all makes sense. It all makes sense when you take time to read it and study it. It makes me happy, that's all. It's absolutely incredible. Okay, back to things. Okay, so there was that last paragraph. I was so hoping he would touch on it, because I've heard, there was this discussion that I read online a while back, on what it really means to take the Lord's name in vain, according to a couple different pastors. And one of them was Catholic, one of them was Protestant, and they had both said given the same interpretation, that using the Lord's name is using God to defend something that isn't godly. And I loved that, because what Pastor Chris talks about in his last paragraph there. But we call ourselves Christians, we take on his name, and yet do we honor him with our lives? Or do we take the fact that we bear his name in vain? Because I love it, we are Christians, we have Christ's name, we have God's name written upon us. And then, so this is the thing. Christians who don't follow Christ are the reason that so many people despise Christ. The reason that so many people fall away from faith is because Christians don't act like Christ. If they did, no one would reject him. Well, I mean, not no one, because that would be God's plan unraveling, but this is to Christian, you can't defend yourself by using God's name, by using God on account of it, or scripture on account of it. You cannot use God to promote your hatred of others. It's horrible, and that is using the name of the Lord in vain. You cannot call yourself a Christian, you cannot use God to defend something that isn't godly. I love that he talked about that. That's absolutely brilliant. It's such a huge issue in our government, in riots, in just everything. All social issues have a Christian component to them, and more often than not, that Christian component is supporting hatred. It's disgusting. And not biblical. Read the passages that God is love, and how you are to love your neighbor as yourself. And that the law of the Bible is only applicable to those who follow the Bible that is in Scripture. So do not judge non-believers by your Christian standards. That will drive them away from faith. Sorry, that was a tangent, but it is really terribly important. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say on that. But okay, there's one more. We have to, in addition to that, we have to show Christ in our lives. We have to live like Christ. Beyond not promoting hatred, we need to show love. We need to show compassion in all things. Because God is love. Yeah, okay, so that's what I got on that. Yeah, I love you very much, Grampy. Hope this helps. So, I'll see you soon.